you know, you can
Hey,
count
what's
on me.
going on, everybody? I am here live with my good friend Anthony Montoya of AutoWorks, and I think that it's really important. I want to tour and kind of give you guys a feel for different industries that I know are being run by good operators that know what they're doing. So, Anthony, give us a little bit of background on what you guys do.
So we do uh, muffler truck accessories, exhaust repair. We do a lot of automotive repair. Um, when it comes to cars, I pretty much do almost anything as far as before paint and body. But
Hmm.
under the hood, the suspension wise, wheels, tires, that sort of thing, we do all that.
That's cool. What got you into that?
So I've been doing this exact same thing since I was about 14 years old. Um, I started sweeping floors in a shop, and by 15, I was a full time mechanic, wrencher, whatever you want to call them. And we were doing that. So I kind of started there, and then of course I've always had a thing for cars, and so it's just kind of always evolved from there. I tried, me and my father tried doing a business, more of a custom style business, and that didn't really work out. I never really got off the ground anything. And then about 9 years ago, yeah, 9 years ago, we moved here into this city about an hour away, and it's just been nose to the grindstone ever since.
Cool. So, walk me through starting a business that was successful versus starting one that was uh, I don't want to say a disaster because I don't know the ins and outs, but basically did not
That's a
work out.
fair assessment.
Okay.
um, so and the other thing is that I wasn't successful in this for really probably 5 years before I made any kind of money. And when I mean money, I mean like able to put gas and pay some bills.
Okay.
Um, that doesn't mean like take home money. So because that's a whole nother thing, right? Like when you're making money, like to do extra things, and when you're just paying stuff, right? So
Yeah.
I went from nothing to something to a little bit more. So like even in the building that I'm still in, I went like a year negative in the first year, 2 years. I was almost a year behind in rent. Thank God my landlord's a nice guy, but
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. So it's rough. But to what really happened along the way, I guess, is like around, let's see, nine. So around year five, I kind of started getting direction. I started kind of figuring out coaching and life
Hmm.
coaching. Like I had heard a little bit about it, but I really didn't understand anything about that stuff. And so I just ended up with direction and ended up, figuring out where I needed to go and meeting the right people and talking to the right people.
Okay.
Like
What?
you've been a big help along the way too.
Cool. I appreciate that, man. What were some of the differences though? Like how you operate your business, what you did that made it profitable, sustainable, brought
So
clients in.
just kind of figuring out how a business is supposed to run. So, because for a long time, I always had the assumption, right? I do work and you give me money and I'm going to make a bunch of money at this and this, and that's it, right? Like
Yeah.
that's how I thought of business. Um, and the truth is that there's a lot more mental, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, if it, because you kind of think hard work gets shit done. You always hear like grinding and hard work and all these things, and that's just never the case. That it doesn't that doesn't pay the bills,
It's
and
one part of the
so a
equation.
lot of it's a part of the equation, but it's not. That's not how you grow. And that what I really lacked was like how to delegate, how to hire people, how to hire the right people. I think me and you had a conversation about that. Hiring the wrong people can be the
Costly.
worst thing that you've ever done. So,
Yep.
and really figuring out what type of people you want to hire, and like not just your friend because you know him, or not just this guy because that's who's available. Like, you really got to figure out what you need as a business to operate professionally, and
Yeah.
or semi-professionally, and however you want to put that.
In loose terms, yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know. I was kind of thinking that earlier. Like there's tons of companies out there, because like big companies that you see, and just because they're big companies, people have the impression that they would have all their shit together. But have you ever tried to get on a phone call with like AT&T or Comcast?
I actually have
Like,
recently with AT&T in the last 6 months. It was a nightmare.
it's a nightmare, right? Like, and
Yep.
so, like, you don't have to have it all figured out, because apparently these big billion-dollar companies don't have it figured out either, because they can never get you the answer to anything. Like,
Hmm.
you're trying to ask them why you're getting charged an extra $200, and they're like, well, you know, it's but
Very
it's fun.
hard, very hard to scale service, right?
Yeah.
It's something that has to be taught, like what kind of the Chick-fil-A model.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's a really good example. I mean, that's a big company that operates really well. So, you know, and that's kind of what I just had to figure out, is how to learn how to operate well. And, because there's lots of other auto shops, right? I mean, you can go to a Midas, a Firestone, a Goodyear, whatever. I don't know what you guys have over there, but those are all businesses here. And what I always try to do is just like do the right thing, but even when it costs me money. And that's a hard thing to know where to draw the line sometimes. So, like, I love to help people out, but
Yep,
that can actually cost you a lot of things too. And that's something else I had to learn: boundaries. Boundaries was a big thing. So, because I
absolutely.
have a feeling like there's a lot of good business owners out there, or people that have the idea of how they want to do business, and sometimes you just gotta figure out that you're trying to give away too much to the wrong people. So,
I agree.
I,
I think one of the things is like you mentioned boundaries, but a lot of industries that are typically bad experience or painful experiences for clients, there's a lot of opportunity there. Car sales, right, is one
right,
of them. Auto
right,
repair, banking,
yeah,
like finance, anything
yeah,
where historically people have had really, really bad um, associations with dealing with that. There's a lot of opportunity, right? So in
right.
that way, our industry is similar. The challenge is how do you coach, train, hire to get people so the experience is almost the same no matter who comes
Right.
in.
That's always harder to do, because, like, because everyone's gonna do something different, right? Like, you can't, and I, God forbid, I would never want anybody to act like a robot, right? Like, I think Chick-fil-A is a good example of that, but in something like our business, things get a little bit more complicated than that. So,
Yeah.
like, you don't have a one size menu that fits all. So,
No.
like, this guy needs 250,000, this guy needs 100,000, this guy's doing some weird shit in his bank, and
Yeah.
there's all these variable factors, and cars is the same thing, right? Like, none of my services are cut across or the same thing for every customer. They're all similar, but everything's different. Every job's different.
Yep.
So, and so different issues arise, broken bolts, weird things that happen that you have to charge more for, that, like, you don't want to, but it just
Yeah.
is what it is. And so, that's that. I've just always tried to tell my guys, like, treat people, and well, to that point, I also found people that already had customer service experience, and that were good people already. So that was a big thing. Like, you know, both, pretty much everybody here has been a friend to me in one way or another, um, beforehand. Not maybe not best friends hanging out on the weekend, but people that I can trust. That
Yeah.
that I knew were good people, because you know who good people are.
Yeah.
You know.
Hire for character, train for skill.
Yep. Yep, exactly. And that's been a big thing for me. And what was the biggest thing, me figuring out who I needed, was by going through people that I never wanted to deal with again. So, because I kind of have this thing, like, you don't really need to know what you want, but you
Yeah.
need to know what you don't want. And that's a big thing.
That's true. I won't hire people in my industry. I won't do it. I'm dead serious. They have bad
Yeah,
habits. I can teach a
yeah,
kid how to do what I do, right? Because they'll
yeah,
have all good habits and they're not tainted, right? And
right.
so people get a better experience with that. That's a great point. So when you were basically eating shit for 4 or 5 years figuring it out, what kept you going?
Dude, I don't know anything. Like, I like, to be honest, like I'm a homeschool dropout. I didn't graduate high school. I was never going to go to college. That wasn't even a thing. So like for me, it was really nothing else. I ever, I didn't know anything else. So what
Yeah.
else was I going to do? So, I mean, it was like, this is kind of like my only option to really kind of figure this thing out. Um, you know, it's kind of funny. Like, even the entire time that I was here, like I was struggling or whatever, like I actually tried to get jobs at other places that wouldn't hire me because either um, just for some reason I never get the call back. Like they wouldn't call me back, wouldn't do anything. In fact, one of them was O'Reilly's that I buy parts for. Um, in fact, I think I spent 60 some $1,000 with them last year,
Yeah.
and I was giving shit to the general manager the other day. I was like, you know, I'm doing this, and it's kind of funny, but I applied here and you guys turned me down. And he just had to. He was like, what the fuck you talking about? And I'm like, yeah, man, I applied and like you guys called, I missed the call, and you wouldn't talk to me afterwards. So I was like, I guess it works out. So
That's funny. That's
yeah,
funny.
it's
It
just
definitely worked out for you.
yeah. I mean, yeah, but and that's I guess I guess a lot of that has to do with God, right? Or like just the universe, whatever you believe in,
Yeah.
like just staying on the same path. For me, like I'm stubborn. Like I'm stubborn as shit. So like you tell me I'm not gonna do something, I'm probably gonna go do it. So like I don't know what else like,
Yeah.
because it's funny, dude. Like because I really probably should have, at some sense, like pulled back and done something else. Like because it
Looking back on
But
it.
yeah, looking back, like I should have just stopped and like got a job somewhere and kind of like use that to like supplement. Like it would have been easier
Yeah.
instead of just like living job to job. Like
Yeah.
literally, like some people, like you're in the business, right? I'm sure that there's been times where you're working from loan to loan, right? Like it feels like you're just barely getting paid on this one and you're already spending that money on this thing, and
Dude,
you know,
when I rebranded, I brought my team over, but we started at zero,
yeah,
and we actually didn't start at zero because I had a lot of costs, right? I had an office, I had salaries to pay. So I had to
right,
go out and fund that all myself until the cash flow caught up, you know?
right, yeah.
And
And I think and it's funny because I got a message earlier from somebody, and they were like, "Hey, man, how did you start with startup, or how did you go about getting startup money?" And I was like, I shot the dude my phone number, and I'm like, "Dude, call me because this is not something I can answer in a message." And I
yeah,
was like, "Kicker, there is no startup money."
yeah. Well, and your business, right? It's capital intensive up front,
Yeah. Oh no, for reals. And
you
dude,
know?
like,
You're not dealing with
man,
cheap equipment.
no, no, I because you funded some of it, but
Yeah.
there's a plug for you.
Oh,
Um,
thanks.
um, dude, it's fast, by the way. Like if you guys need some shit, like Jonathan's got the hook on it. Anyways,
Thank you. I appreciate it. But I want to spotlight you, what you're doing, and I want you to teach other people because
right,
I see a lot of different businesses, right? And I see a lot of auto repair. And you can see who runs. I can tell how a business runs, obviously by looking at it, but also by the operator. So you have a lot of knowledge to share. That's kind of what I want to get to here is like,
yeah,
hey man, like what are some of the things that you've done that have set you apart? What are some of the lessons? Like I'm sure we all make mistakes. I've made more mistakes than most. I just kept going because like you, I was way too stubborn.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and I don't know like what else you can tell people, like other than just not quitting. Like,
Yeah,
because there was days where it's fucking sucked.
yeah,
Like I'm staring out the window. I got this. Like I told you, I was over a year behind in rent.
yeah.
Like my landlord's like, he's a really cool dude, but at some point they're kind of like, when are you gonna fucking pay me? Um, and I'm like, I don't know. Like
Do you need your car
that's a terrible
fixed?
dude. He should, yeah, exactly, man. Oh, dude, I clucked off more. Like my wife had a little Chevy Malibu at the time. It was like a 2004 Chevy Malibu, um, and like I gave that to him just to kind of like keep going. And
Yeah,
I had another car she could drive or whatever. She wasn't walking, but it's just like all these things that happened along the way to kind of make it like, dude, I survived off of tax refunds. I bought my first lift off of tax
Mhm.
refunds because when I showed up, there was nothing here. Um,
Yeah.
I had my basic tools, a welder, a chop saw, a couple basic things um, that that made me, that I could use to make money with. But I
Mhm.
didn't have equipment. I never had a two post lift. So the first time we got our because we got 5 kids now, but at that time we only had 2. When we got our tax refund, I was like, yo, I don't know what you want to do with that money, but I need this.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah,
she
but
was
dude,
like,
that's a
okay,
great story, man. Like most
right.
people would never even think about starting that without some of the gear that you didn't have for a year or two. Now think about if you had the
Yeah.
equipment, right? How much
Yeah.
faster could
Well,
you have got through jobs?
right. Well, yeah, that's, it's an obvious thing when you're looking at it. But yeah, so it's just weird because like I did everything I could to work on that, and then once I kind of got along there, right, like things are going along. One of the other things was like um, the place that I worked at before, right? Because I didn't start out doing mufflers, right? It's kind of weird. Like you never really start out doing the thing that makes you money.
Yeah.
That's also another weird thing. Like everyone's always kind of doing something else, and then they kind of work their way into this thing. So what I did, I started making money off of mufflers, and what it was is that I knew how to weld.
Hmm.
I knew the basics of how to put them on. I
Yep.
didn't know like everything that there was to know, but I knew this guy. His name's Willie Morgan. He's a really really good friend of mine, and he took a chance on me, and so I called him up one day, and I was like, you know what, I want to start doing exhaust because there's a couple other places that do it, but I could compete with that. You know,
Yeah.
it's not like tires because tires you have to have money to get tires and stuff like that.
And they're
So I
not great
started.
margins tires, right?
Yeah, it's like it's kind of flooded and there's not tons of markup in it. So like tires is a tougher gig, um, but I was like, I can do this stuff because I used to do it, and so I was like, all right, um, and so I call him up and I'm like, yo, I'm doing this now. Will you sell me stuff? And he's like, yeah, I'll sell you some stuff. And because he's a cool dude like that. Like he didn't
Yeah.
ask me for like tax ID, business license, all this. Like when you get set up with
Yeah.
someone, he's like, yeah, when we're up there on Fridays, what do you need? And so I was like, well, I need like 2 mufflers. All right. So like, do my first order of mufflers, and this is like 2 years in, right? So like I've been struggling along like 3 years at this point, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay. So I get this order put together of things that I know that I could probably sell. And I'm like, so I run some little Facebook ads in the swap pages or whatever, get a little bit of traffic, and I sell like 2 or 3 things. The first order is like $300. Um, and I'm sweating it because I don't have $300. So I buy what I could buy. And then so like a couple weeks goes by, I think I might get 1 or 2 more. And I'm like, I talked to him a little bit more and he's like, you know what? Um, how much stuff do you think you could sell? And I'm like, well, I could do a little bit more. He's like, well, I'll this dude's the plug, by the way. Like when it comes to exhaust, like he's fronting people, right? Like he's the whitest drug dealer I know. Anyway, so yeah, I think he ends up fronting me like $1,500 worth of stuff, and I just kind of I kept going a little bit, slowly, and like I'd put in orders for 500-600 bucks, and I'm watching the other guys' orders, and I'm like, dude, I don't know if I'm ever gonna make it there. Um, so we go along, and then he calls me and he tells me that there's a guy in the city that I came from that is going out of business and he has a muffler bender. So I didn't even have the machine to actually do mufflers. I'm just putting pieces together of what I can do.
Yeah.
Like, so that's kind of an interesting thing too, is like I was just doing what I could do with what I had. And so I call up my aunt and I'm like, hey, I hate to do this to you, but can I borrow like 4,000 bucks? And she's like, yeah, because like she's my she's really cool. And
Yeah.
she's like, yeah, not a problem. Pay me back. So I go and she wires me the money, and I go down there with the cash and I buy the thing. Or no, actually he brings it to me. Yeah, I didn't have to actually go get it. But he brings it to me, drops it off to me. I pay him out. Really nice guy. Um, Solid dude. And then from there, it was just like, it was easier to make money after that.
Yeah.
So, and then um, the next evolution of that was actually me, like, not only working, right? Like, cause it's just me still. I think there might've been a guy floating back and forth here and there that was a joke.
Mhm.
But I'm sitting there, and then one day, like, now we're making a little bit of money. I'm getting burnt out. It's only me. And I'm like, okay, it's kind of, I just keep going. And I end up hiring one guy to help me because I need help. And then somewhere along the lines, my welder now, he shows up, and he was like, are you hiring? I was like, yeah, we'll put you to work. But actually, right before that, because I need to go back a minute because I skipped the part. Um, I was sitting in a coaching group, and I'm like, yo, how, like, I was scared to finance anything, like
Yeah.
super scared. Because I was like, I don't know if I could make the payments. And, which is kind of crazy because I'm making money, but, you're like at that point where you're like, you're living, like, you don't know. Like, I just don't fucking know.
Yeah.
And so at this point, I had bought into like one of those coaching groups, and I asked the question, I'm like, how do you know when you're ready to finance? And he's like, well, if you can get the loan, just go get the fucking loan.
Yeah.
And I was like, is that easy? And he was like, yeah, just go there and go get the loan. He's like, see what they tell you. Well, fuck, I could do that. So I went to the bank, and I was able to get more equipment. And I just did that over and over and over. You
Yeah.
just repeat that process over again, and you hire one more guy and you do the thing, and you know, now we're, you know, now I'm where I am. But
Yeah.
it's a lot of it was just doing what I could with what I had,
Yeah.
and taking a chance and jumping,
Yeah.
right? Those are really the only things that you can do. So like, you just do what you can do every day. Like,
Oh, dude, absolutely.
like
And you
sometimes
put things
that's
together
literally
too
day to
as you
day.
go along.
Yeah. Like, what can you do?
Yep.
Right. Like I didn't have a chance to really even borrow any money until COVID, because of course they had COVID loans floating around. Like, and that helpful? Yeah. But, up and, for a long time, it was just doing that process over and over again, doing what I could get, getting what I can get, doing with what I had, because you can never, even now, like, most days I can cover most of the equipment that I need to buy, under a certain dollar amount.
Yeah.
And but still, it's like, you just do what you can do, and at the end of the day, what more can you do?
Yeah, absolutely, man. But most people don't talk about that. Most people want to see the highlight reel, right? But
Yeah,
the reality is when you're starting a business and you're growing a business, you make a lot of mistakes. Some of them are very costly. You always
yeah,
have that fear in the back of your head. Can I do this? Is this for me? Is this worth it? And you just got
yeah,
to push on. And as long as you don't make those same mistakes over and over, you're fine. But most people don't even get started. And most people quit if they make one or two of those mistakes, you know?
yeah. No, I mean, like I said, I really had no choice. So it was like, either get better or die. I mean, like, what more could you do?
Yeah.
And I, I,
Uh,
I would like to think that my conscience helped me out along the way to do the right thing, because I've always been a person like, I'll never burn you. Um,
yeah.
I give you my word. That's what it is. And that was actually a big teaching moment. Is I had taken on a job that was a little bit above my pay grade, or out of my hands to complete. Um, and it was a truck that I had committed to doing airbags on, and I couldn't finish it. I couldn't.
Yeah.
And um, luckily, I had just gotten into the muffler thing, and I was making some money. And I just looked at the dude one day, and I said, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm a real asshole. Um, and I've been dragging you out for a year or so, or maybe even 2 years on this, and I can't finish it. And I just gave him back his money, you
Yeah.
know. And it's not like I had the money to give him, but I was just like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
here's your money back. You know, like,
Yeah, I mean it's tough. It's challenging, but to see that type of growth over that type of time, right? So you got into the right network, got the right coaching, fix the mindset from
yeah,
all right, I'm just going to do everything I can and work really hard to all right, how do I grow? How do I scale? Right?
yeah,
And typically, most of the big mistakes I've made were how do I grow? How do I scale? Like I remember a business I started when I was still working at a fintech company. And I'm like, hey, you know what? Why don't I start a brokerage for one program while I'm working here? And they cleared it, they green lighted it. And what I did was I ordered a whole bunch of leads, but the leads I ordered, one, I didn't really understand how important being client facing was. Two, I didn't understand the power of reviews and networking, and I certainly didn't have the growth mindset because I wasn't in the right network. And so what I
right,
did was I dropped probably 40 grand to do a mail campaign. Well, the mail campaign, the company I used, I don't think ever sent out anything because out of that 40 grand, I think we got maybe 10 phone calls.
right,
And to compile on an already terrible decision, I wasn't there when it was coming in, so I didn't know who was in the office I set up. I didn't have them trained perfectly,
right.
and I left it up to everybody else. And obviously, that crashed and burned. These are things that you make that mistake. Hopefully, you learn from that mistake. You don't make it again. Yeah, you're going to burn through some money. You can get money back though. So
You know, I was just at, I don't know if you saw, but I was just at one of the Lions Den fly-ins last week, and Waylon was actually talking about that. Was he made a decision last year that cost him a significant amount of money, um, and uh, at the time he thought it was the right decision. Like, you just make these decisions, and no matter how much, like, I mean, Waylon's a brilliant guy. He's smart, but he did what he thought was right, and it just didn't work out, you know, and what do you do?
yeah,
Like, you just jump and you learn, and let me tell you what, you don't jump twice if it works out bad.
that's the truth. You
you
know,
know and,
and
and cause I think it's interesting though, because like no matter at any level you're at, you can make that mistake, and if you make that mistake, guess what, life's going to go on, you're going to figure it out. So every time I always thought like, this is it, I'm done, this thing, I'm finished, that's never been the case.
yeah,
Never.
you have to just keep pushing through. And I will say this: as you get bigger and bigger, and you move on to new levels, you're gonna find new mistakes to make, and they're always significantly more costly than the
Yes.
mistakes on the prior level by a
Yeah.
wide margin.
Yeah, I try to avoid them as much as possible, but that's like, it is what it is. Like last year, one of the guys screwed up in the shop, and um, uh, I lost a motor on a truck, and my guys were scared to tell me about it.
Yeah,
Um, there was some things to it that weren't necessarily completely all in our fault, but the end result was my guys were the last one to touch it, so therefore I'm responsible.
yeah,
Right? I mean, like, what else are you gonna do? And so my guys didn't want to, like, well, we don't know what really happened. Well, I'm like, dude, I don't care. How much is it gonna cost to fix it?
yeah,
And they're like, well, I said, just call and find a brand new motor. And dude, this is an old truck. Like, I
yeah,
shouldn't have to put a new motor in this, but whatever. Um, I'm like, I don't care. Just fix it. Just fix it. And so it comes in. It cost me like, I don't know, $2,500. And I was laughing. I was like, cool. Here's the card. And they're like, what's your problem? And I'm like, dude, you know how happy I am to have the money to be able to fix this?
yeah,
Because I've had these things happen where I didn't have the money. Like,
yep,
this, like, dude, I'm ecstatic right now. Like, and the best part is I'm not the one that has to change it. You guys do. So, like, it's just money.
yeah,
you know I if you look at it like that, it is what it is. You eat the shit that you got to eat, and you eat it with a smile, and you keep going.
That's it, man. That's it. So we talked about like a lot of the growth. We talked about some of the mistakes. Where do you see the industry going with all the new changes that are happening with technology? Do you see
Oh,
any big
like you mean
changes in
like
your
with
industry?
electric, or is that what you're
Yeah,
getting at?
anything like anything that's a potential disruptor.
Anything like that? I mean, there's always going to be gas cars.
Always what?
There's always
Gas
going to be
cars.
gas cars. Yeah,
Yeah.
like um, that way. I mean, even if there's electric, mechanics will just evolve into whatever that means. Obviously, electric would be terrible for mufflers because you don't have exhaust systems on electric cars, but it's always going to evolve in some way, shape, or form. And no matter what the government says, no matter what anything looks like, this industry is going to be around for a long time.
Yeah.
So it's too big of an industry, and you know how that goes. I mean, they can say whatever they want over here, but when you have a billions upon billions of dollars in
Yeah.
this space, like you can't just shut that down.
No. No
So I mean, it's
chance.
like they always talk about shutting down oil, but you can't shut down oil because it's so big. Like,
Yeah.
dude, and people with money protect their stuff. So, especially
100%.
billion-dollar companies.
100%. So where can everybody find you on social, the shop? They want to get in touch with you.
Just on Facebook, I'm Anthony Montoya. On Instagram, I'm at the Anthony Montoya because I am the one. But I mean, there's lots of Anthony Montoyas, but yeah, there's not many D's.
Yeah. Very cool. And yeah, man, after you get the gun runner thing from being a hobby, I want you to come on for that because I love that stuff. We both
Yeah,
love
that's
that
fun.
stuff.
That's fun. That's a whole nother thing. I will tell someone a little bit of advice about that. If
Yeah.
you don't know what you're doing, you should not spend money on it.
Amen.
So I
Amen.
don't know. I don't know how many times I got it, like, and I knew better, but it's still cool. Like at the end of the day, I have all kinds of guns.
Yeah.
So you
You
can't
got a
argue
great
with that
collection.
fact. Yeah. So, but yeah, if you don't know your thing, like stick to your thing. Like, do what you know.
100%, man. Well,
It
hey,
will be much more cost effective in the long run.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, those are called tuition payments. I heard that on Real AF the other day, and it's so
Yeah,
fitting.
that's true,
Tuition
right?
payments.
Well,
I've
let's
made a
just
lot.
let's just say when I did have more extra money, um, those tuition payments were fairly sizable.
Yeah. Yep.
That was literally someone's whole tuition.
It's typically how that goes.
So, but
Listen, I appreciate you, brother. Guys, reach out. He's he's being very, very modest on here, but he knows his shit, and he's an open book, which I like. So, brother, I
dude,
appreciate you.
I'm
And
just a dumb kid that has no idea what he's doing most days. Like, what more? Like, that's it, man.
it's hysterical. All right, I'll catch you later, guys. Thanks
All
for
right,
joining us.
thanks, boss. Appreciate it.
Take care.